Okay, it's new bike day today. This is the brand new Mondraker Crafty, and this one is the double R model. Now it's running on 29-inch wheels, and it's got 150mm travel on the rear, 160 on the front, and it has that brand new Bosch Performance CX motor. Now before we dive any more into this, I really want to tell you a story about the Crafty because it's actually one of our most important bikes. Now many of you will know the Crafty as our do-it-all e-bike, and it has very sleek looks. But it actually looked like this when we first released the bike back in 2016. Now I haven't got one of those models to show you. This one is actually from 2017, but that itself brings a very cool story. So this one is a Crafty R, and from this year in 2017, it became our most popular bike. So this model, the Crafty R, every year from 2017, has been the bike we've sold the most amount of in terms of units and also in terms of revenue. It's an extremely sought after bike and extremely popular. Now this early one had the Generation 2 Bosch Performance CX motor on here, and well, look at the size of the thing, it's absolutely massive. And of course it had that tiny little pinion style gear on the front there, really quite small, and a very different system to what we're used to today. The thing with Mondraker bikes is we like to build long-standing relationships, and the one with Bosch has a great story because we wanted to run this from the very beginning when we were experimenting with e-bikes in 2015. But as a company, we were too small to fulfill the orders required by Bosch in order to buy them to spec on our bikes. But our product team had other ideas, so they sat down and they discussed everything with Bosch, and Bosch soon realised that what we really wanted to do was help develop components that are going to work great for our bikes, that are going to work great for their bikes, they can learn about the bikes they're going in and build a long-lasting relationship. So from the very beginning, before we actually used this early Generation 2 motor, our product guys were actually testing the motor, and although it had 4 very powerful and very adaptable modes, it didn't quite do what they were looking for. So I think it's fair to say a lot of the bike industry at the time were looking for an e-bike to be a replacement for a shuttle, to get you to the top of the mountain so you could enjoy the ride back down. But that's not how our product team saw where e-bikes were going to go. They identified the fact that riding up technical terrain was going to be one of the most exhilarating things you could do. And essentially you have twice the fun, twice the ride on every ride. So they got to work with Bosch engineers on what you now know as the eMTB setting. How cool is that? Our guys had the idea to do something like this, and Bosch implemented this, and now you can have this on any bike. We're just going to move over to this slightly more familiar Crafty. So this shape of Crafty, no doubt is going to be a lot more familiar to you. That classic blade of a top tube that flows straight into the seat stays there, and really this epitomises what the Crafty is, a sleek looking bike with fantastic performance on all terrain. We've actually had this style design since 2019. I think this one is a 2022 model, but this was made possible when Bosch dramatically improved and shrunk the motor system from that early Gen 2 into what we have on here, which is the Gen 4. Excellent bike, and over the years it saw incremental changes and improvements so it could adapt to new technology. But what we have today is literally a brand new bike. Let's go a bit closer. So bang up to date with our 2025 model. Now firstly, it still has the Crafty name. It still has the same intentions that the Crafty is always designed for. This was supposed to tackle and be able to handle the most technical climbs imaginable, but also the same on the way back down. It's literally supposed to give you twice the amount of fun. But really those two things are where the similarities end with the Crafty, because this is a completely new frame from the ground up. We have looked at everything that we have achieved with the Crafty lineup through the years, and we have sat down and tried to figure out how we can make it better in every single aspect. So let's start by looking at the frame. Now the first thing you're probably going to notice is how different the suspension design is compared to the Crafty that everyone knows and loves. And yeah, it takes the same exact form from what we've already achieved with the F-Podium, with the Neat, and the most recent Sly that you'll no doubt have seen. Now the idea about this was to lower the rocker on the frame, and this was going to do a number of different things. So firstly, it was to enable us to use either 2 water bottle cages in the front triangle, or more importantly, a range extender and a bottle cage. You still have the ability on this frame. So that was one of the first design features. Now by lowering this, we had to revise the position of the shock. So it's now driven from the rear end of the bike as opposed to the lower linkage, but it's still compressed from both ends, meaning it's a very, very supple action. Now the shock itself is very slightly shorter, which means we've increased the leverage ratio here. So the mid support is really, really high. So this is fantastic for climbing to keep that bottom bracket out of harm's way as much as possible. And it's a bit more supple off the top, and it has plenty of support on there. And that works hand in hand with the tune that we have on our shocks across all of the different models. Next up, you'll notice the front triangle. Again, looks very different to the previous model. So the top tube still has that pocket behind the head tube that we're famous for, and the top tube itself is slim. However, if you compare it directly to the existing Crafty, you'll see that it's quite a lot bigger, a lot more robust, and I think a lot more aggressive. That's also countered here by the down tube, which is significantly bigger than our previous design. And that's because previously we had the 750 watt-hour integrated battery, and something everyone was looking for our bikes was a removable battery. So we have that option, and this has the new Bosch 600 watt-hour or the new Bosch 800 watt-hour batteries available. Both of them fit in all of the frames, and they have a carbon battery case on the outside there. Super neat and tidy system, and it enables you to swap batteries, to travel without batteries in the bike, and for people that need it, to be able to charge the batteries away from the bike. And we also now have 5 sizes available, just like we had with the recently launched Sly. So we have the small, the medium large, this is one of those, the large and the extra large. Now the geometry has been completely refined on these bikes. Now in the past we were really made famous for our forward geometry system, which uses the 30mm stem and the longer front center on the bikes. And yes, this has dramatically changed handling on, I think it's fair to say, a lot of modern mountain bikes. But nowadays for us, it's more about increasing the overall balance on the bike. As we've had more powerful motors and the capabilities of the bikes have changed, we're now looking at different ways to achieve what we want from our frames. So with those 5 sizes, there's also 2 different chainstay lengths available. The small, the medium and the medium large all have 455mm chainstays. The large and the extra large have 465mm. Head angle in the standard setting of the 2 settings is 64.5 degrees. Seat angle is a shade under 80 degrees, so really quite steep, and the bottom bracket height is 350mm off the deck, and that works perfectly with the 160mm cranks that you see across the board on all sizes. There's a flip chip just in the back end here at the base of the shock, and this allows you to fine tune that geometry. So putting it in the lower setting will then drop the bottom bracket approximately 5mm, and it will also slacken the head and seat angle by approximately 0.4 degrees. Now that might not sound much, but it actually makes a really big difference in terms of handling on the bike. And then of course there's the motor system on the bike. So this is the brand new Bosch Performance CX motor. It's an all new motor, and it has loads of revisions internally on this. Now on paper the specs don't sound that different. It still has 85 Newton meters of power, it has 600 watts of peak power available. But the dynamic feel to this and the sensitivity of it when you use it is dramatically different. It's a much calmer motor in the way that it implements that power. It feels a lot more natural the way that it gives you that support. All the modes on here, as previously with the smart system, are fully tunable. You can get the over-the-air updates using the app on there. And of course, powering our new Crafty is the brand new Bosch Performance CX motor. I mean, we couldn't put anything else on here. Now this motor is extremely exciting. Now I've not yet ridden the production one of these, but I've been had the privilege to ride the prototypes on a run-up test, and I've ridden this motor quite extensively, and it's quite remarkable the difference. Even though at a glance, it doesn't look that much different. So for starters, gone is the 3-bolt mounting system, replaced by the 2-bolt system. You might have noticed that on their SX motor previously as well. So it's just enabled them to help reduce a bit of complication down there, and of course reduce a little bit of weight as well. Now the motor still kicks out 600 watts of peak power, and it still pushes out 85 Newton meters of torque. It still has the same dynamic settings that you can have freedom of changing via the smart system and the application there. So it still has the same 4 familiar modes on there. You have the Eco mode, of course, you have the Tour Plus mode, you have the eMTB, and you have the Turbo, of which you can adjust the parameters to get them feeling exactly how you want. Of course, you could not bother and just ride it stock out of the box, but the option is there to tailor-made these things exactly as you want them. The beauty of the smart system from Bosch. Now you also might notice there's a brand new display on the top here. This is the Purion 400. And you also might notice it's now on this side of the handlebars. So it's actually in a more protected position than the bigger kiosk systems that we used in the past. And universally, this has become a favorite amongst the crew here at Mondraker for the ability of it just displaying what you need. And it's really easy to see it at a glance without it distracting your view on the bike. It's a Bosch system though, so if you see fit, you could still remove this. It's the beauty of this system. So you have the mini remote here, which is wireless. You have the system controller on the top tube there. And then of course, there's a few of the little secret weapons with the motor system. So the first one is it's so much quieter when you're pedaling than the previous design. You can still hear the motor, but compared to the regular CX, it's virtually silent. It really makes a huge difference. And if you're familiar with the Performance CX motor from the past, you'll know on the rough descents and stuff, you can hear basically like a clutch on the inside. You can hear it slightly metallic clunking. That's completely gone. So the motor now, in combination with how supple the suspension is on this bike, means the bike's virtually completely silent. And that makes a massive difference. Now, if you're familiar to riding the Performance CX motor up until the current point, I'd say the difference is between riding that and riding this new one. It was like the day when you first rode a clutch derailleur. It's that different. And then of course, there's the batteries, because they're brand new as well. So previously we had the 750 watt-hour battery integrated into our frames. A nice slender long battery enabled us to use a much more slimline frame. Now there's 2 batteries available. There's the 600 watt-hour and the 800 watt-hour. Now the cool thing with these is A, they're removable, B, they both fit in whatever frame we have, so they're all compatible in all of them. And the coolest thing about this is the weight difference. Now the 600 watt-hour battery is over 600 grams lighter than the previous 625 watt-hour battery, and the 800 watt-hour battery is over 400 grams lighter than the previous 750. So not only are they both substantially lighter, but they're much higher density in terms of their efficiency. They are just far superior in every way. Now we offer 5 different models of the Crafty. We have the Crafty R and the RR, both featuring an alloy rear end with a carbon front end. Those models have the 800 watt-hour battery. Then we have the RS, the XR and the RR SL. All of those models are complete carbon designs, carbon front end, carbon back end and the carbon monoblock, which is this part of the frame here. Now those ones, to maximise on the lightweight of them, they also have the 600 watt-hour battery in the frame. Now, just to paint a perspective of how light we've been able to get these thanks to the new system from Bosch, the RR SL model, which features an inline shock and a Fox 36 fork, weighs in about 21 kilograms. Pretty impressive for a full power bike. Okay, so onto the transmission of the bike, and we have a wireless transmission from SRAM. This time it's the GX T-Type Access on here. To be honest, I've used this on a couple of bikes and it's been absolutely flawless. I especially like the fact that the battery goes in at the top here rather than on the back. Just the added security, or if you've got friends like mine, stops them trying to pinch a battery in the middle of a ride. Super reliable system, works really well, and it pairs up with the race face Afex cranks on the front. Now these are 160 millimeters, which we have found to be the optimum size in terms of both pedaling but also ground clearance. Now let's not forget that the bottom bracket height on this bike is 350 millimeters in the higher of the 2 settings, because of the fact that we've optimized the bike for pedaling up rocky terrain. The same with suspension design on here. It's designed to give you the optimum amount of anti-squat so you can get up the climbs, but it's incredibly supple and active. No matter what you're doing, you're pedaling, you're coasting, you're on the brakes, it's still going to be working fantastically. And the rear hub itself has the ID360 ratchet ring system in there. Now, of course, in different hubs, you can have either traditional pulls on the inside, or you can have a ratchet ring. Personally speaking, on an e-bike delivering this amount of torque and power constantly, I think having a ratchet system is a really smart idea. They're dead easy to maintain as well. Now, you might have thought that I've neglected to talk about the reach of the bike because of the fact our bikes are quite famous for being nice and long. Now, to start with, the size small of the 5 sizes is 446 millimeters. Then we move up to 460 on the medium, 480 on the medium large, 500 on the large, and 520 on the extra large. Now, something key about this additional sizing is the length of the head tubes on the bike. Now, head tubes are longer across all sizes. The small and the medium have 120 millimeters, the medium has 130, the large has 140, and the extra large has 150 mil available there. Now, this makes a massive difference for taller and smaller riders in terms of the setup on the bike. Now, previously, I'd be running the size XL. So my Crafty, which is the older style frame, I run a size XL, but to get the handlebars where I like them, I've got 30 millimeters worth of spacers underneath the stem, and I've got a 38 mil rise bar. But with the latest design, I can run it much lower. The cool thing about this is the front end of the bike effectively is longer, because when you raise your stem up, of course, you are effectively reducing your reach. By having the front end that's slightly longer anyway, with a longer head tube on there, you're actually effectively keeping the bike in a longer position in a more natural way. So now I can actually choose between riding the XL and the large. To me, that's a bit of a revelation, because I've naturally always been drawn to the longer size bikes, but now I can have a bit more fun on something. If I want to have a bit more of a maneuverable ride, I could pick a large. If I wanted to have the more stability, I could size up for the extra large. Now, of course, this was just one of the models in the range. This is the RR. Just to emphasize, this has the 800 watt-hour battery and the alloy rear end. There's another model below this that also shares the alloy back end. That is the R model. And above it, there's 3 models in full carbon. Now, all of them are pretty nice looking bikes, but I've got to say, this one is a bit of a weakness for me. I absolutely love the color, and it's very similar to another bike you're going to see coming from us quite soon.